Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I am joined by Lou from the Louie T Network, and we are going to be having a competition. Who can draft better? We're going to be mocking the 2014 NFL Draft, the first round of the 2014 NFL Draft, and we will be alternating picks, going back and forth. He has the honor of going first. He will be owning the Texans, the Jaguars, so on and so forth. I will be owning the Rams, the Browns, the Falcons, so on and so forth. So, with that said, Lou, do you have any trash talk you want to say before this video starts?
Of course I do. I'm going first because I'm the best.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, that's what he might believe, but it's better to finish last. But that's just me talking. So, number one pick overall, Houston Texans. You're on the clock. Who do you pick?
Houston Texans select with their first overall selection in the 2014 draft, Jadeveon Clowney, defensive end, South Carolina. To me, this is a no-brainer. Look, when your owner continues to tell anyone who will listen that this guy is the best prospect in the last decade since Mario Williams, and he's a better athlete than Mario Williams, when your owner is providing you with the greatest smoke screen ever, that's wonderful, but I don't think it's a smoke screen. I mean, I don't need my owner providing a smoke screen for me. I can do that myself if I'm a head coach. Think that everything that the Texans has been saying right now is the honest to God truth. We even had their GM, Rick Smith, come out and say, hey, I already know who we're selecting. I'd love to trade out of this pick, but we know who we're selecting. I don't think he's lying. I think he knows that the pick is Jadeveon Clowney. And that's who I have the Houston Texans selecting first overall.
I mean, yeah, and the Texans, I mean, they want Clowney, and there's no reason to smoke screen. I mean, the only reason to smoke screen is that you may say, okay, Clowney's great, we're going to take him. That way maybe a team may trade up to you and try to take him, but it really doesn't make sense. If you're the number one overall pick, your number one overall team picking in the draft, there's no need to smoke screen. There's no need to lie. Just pick who you want or trade out of it. It should be as simple as that. But, Texans saying they want Clowney. I'm not sure he's a good fit in the 3-4 defense. I know, yes, he's very athletic. He can play 3-4 DN. He can play 3-4 outside linebacker. You can stand him up. You can put him in coverage. But I think Jadeveon Clowney will get very lazy and tired of that, quite frankly. And if you're not winning games, if the Texans struggle to win games and Bill O'Brien loses the locker room, there goes Clowney. And what a bad pick for the Houston Texans. But all right, to each his own. So now I'm on the clock with the St. Louis Rams, and the Rams would love nothing more than to trade back here. But let's say the Atlanta Falcons. But the Falcons are like, hey, we know an offensive tackle is going to fall to us. We're going to sit here. We're going to take an offensive tackle. So the Rams are like, okay, we're in a pickle. We could take Khalil Mack, put him at outside linebacker on the strong side. We need one of those, and then have a terrific front, including Robert Quinn, Chris Long, and have Khalil Mack there. Great. I mean, I think that's beating a dead horse. Okay, we get it. You have a pass rush. Why not take an offensive tackle? But Jeff Fisher isn't just going to take Greg Robinson. I know it makes a lot of sense. Let's book Greg Robinson to go to St. Louis, but we're forgetting a big thing. Jeff Fisher is very close to the St. Louis Rams, with the Matthews family, and he has been for quite some time. And I don't believe without a doubt that Jeff Fisher is going to pick Jake Matthews, son of Bruce Matthews, the more polished and pro-ready tackle as of this moment. Sure, Greg Robinson has more upside, but I think Jeff Fisher is going to side with the, maybe less upside, but more polished prospect who happens to be a family friend.
So I'm taking it you feel that Roger Saffold and Jake Long won't be able to get it done at the tackle position.
Yes, absolutely. And Jake Matthews, remember, this is a guy who can play all five positions on the offensive line. Let's not forget that.
Yeah, but he's being drafted as a tackle. You know that. I know that. At 2, I feel like the Rams ought to take Sammy Watkins or an offensive tackle not named Jake Matthews, but that's a solid pick. That's your pick. I'm on the clock now. And so I'm Jacksonville Jaguars. Number 3 pick overall in the 2014 draft, selecting, you want to say a guy like possibly Johnny Manziel here? Maybe. I'm hearing a lot of buzzing out of Jacksonville that they like Johnny Manziel a lot and they would love to select him at 3, but I just don't think you have the liberty to pass on a guy that can be a game changer. And we know Gus Bradley is a defensive minded head coach coming from Seattle. He's looking for that Leo position, that guy that can play that hybrid linebacker defensive end position, get after the quarterback, be a chess piece on the defensive side of the field for Gus Bradley. I just don't think they can pass on linebacker slash defensive end Khalil Mack out of Buffalo. That's the pick at number 3 for Jacksonville.
And as you said, Gus Bradley's a defensive-minded coach, so that's going to cloud his judgment here. I'm not a big Khalil Mack fan as others are. Fact of the matter is, I do look at level competition, and the fact of the matter is he dominated, what was it, the MAC conference? I mean, I can't tell you another college from that conference. You have University at Buffalo, and you have some other colleges out there, and sure, he dominates over there at that level, but it's a big jump to go from the MAC conference to the NFL. And when you're the Jacksonville Jaguars, you still have Chad Henne starting at quarterback. Chad Henne has been starting at quarterback for the past 2 years. It's time for you to take a quarterback with this number 3 overall pick, but they want to take Khalil Mack, that's fine. I'm the Browns. I'm sitting at number 4. Sammy Watkins has fallen to us. Boom. Take Sammy Watkins, put him right across from Josh Gordon, and no matter what quarterback you have out there, whether it be Vince Young, Tyler Thigpen, or Brian Hoyer on one leg, you will have no problem throwing to Sammy Watkins, whether it be on a flat, on a screen, on an out route, on a corner route, on a go route. He can do it all. Sammy Watkins is a complete wide receiver prospect. He's not as great as, let's say, A.J. Green or a Calvin Johnson because he doesn't have the size to be, but he's a complete, fluid wide receiver prospect that the Cleveland Browns would love to pick up.
I would love to beat you up and tell you that you're wrong, but I can't disagree with that. If Sammy Watkins falls to the Browns at 4, I think you got to jump and pounce all over this guy. And so I think that's the absolute right pick at number 4 for the Browns. But we're at 5 now with the Raiders. And I initially thought to myself, what would be a good selection for the Raiders here? You think about all the moves they made in free agency, went out and got Matt Schaub. That's essentially a 1-year deal, and he has to prove that he belongs, and I just don't see it happening. So quarterback, you would think, would be in order at 5. They went out and revamped the offensive line last year. They took Menelik Watson in the 2nd round. So you're thinking offensive line can't be the pick here at 5, but then you look around and you see what's available. Yeah, the Raiders would love to get out of 5. I just don't see it happening. And so you're stuck having to pick an offensive lineman. Keep in mind, general manager Reggie McKenzie, ex-offensive lineman with the Washington Redskins, part of that hog unit up front. He's an offensive lineman at heart, and at 5, he's going to take the best one available in his mind with the most upside. That's going to be Greg Robinson, offensive tackle out of Auburn.
I mean, like you said yourself, they drafted Menelik Watson in the 2nd round last year, and they signed Donald Penn and Austin Howard in free agency. How many tackles do you need on one team? You can only start 2 of them. But I can also understand where he's coming from. He's by far the best player on the board at this juncture, and Dennis Allen is at a win now mode, so why not put in Greg Robinson, who could come in and probably start at right tackle, if not left tackle. So I can understand where you're coming from, but still have some issues with your pick there. Now, Atlanta, I was sitting here, and I had some problems with this pick. Because, I mean, Atlanta, this would be a nightmare scenario where Jake Matthews, David Clowney, Khalil Mack, and Greg Robinson, 4 of your top guys on your board are gone. 1, 2, 3, 4, boom, boom, boom. They're gone, nowhere to be found on your board. And now you're stuck in trouble. I mean, you would love to get a defensive player, but none of them are even close right now, except for maybe Anthony Barr, but it's too early. Not for your system. Don't do it. So why not take Taylor Lewan out of Michigan? He's a top 10 prospect in this draft. He's a very good offensive tackle. He can come in, play right tackle, and maybe end up playing left tackle. I'm not a big fan of Sam Baker at all, nor should I be. So let's take Taylor Lewan, let's plug him in, and let's get Matt Ryan back on track with some good protection.
Now, I actually am a huge fan of Taylor Lewan. but not at number 6. I have to laugh at this selection because if you're the Falcons, you're right. You're stuck between a rock and a hard place because all of the guys you wanted are off the board at this point, and you have to fill a position of need here. And so you take the best player available at one of your positions of need. That happens to be offensive tackle. It happens to be Taylor Lewan. Just feel like it's a little bit too early for him, but again, he's a top 10 prospect anyway, so he goes at 6. But we're at 7 now with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and this one is a no-brainer. You get rid of Mike Williams in the offseason. He gets stabbed by his brother, and you're tired of his shenanigans. You ship him out to Buffalo, and so you leave a huge void at the number 2 receiver position on your football team. You already have one big 6'5" receiver in Vincent Jackson. Why not get an understudy for Vincent Jackson? He's the prototypical big play, big target receiver. Why not go get another guy just like him, a clone in Mike Evans from Texas A&M? Pair the two up, match made in heaven. There's nothing else to talk about at 7 for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
I mean, why not get a clone? I mean, you have Mike Evans and Vincent Jackson across from each other. Who's going to be running a slant route, not one of these two? I mean, it comes to the matter of this. Yes, do they need a wide receiver? Sure, they need a wide receiver. And I think the best fit, if I had to get a prospect, and well, for number 1, Sammy Watkins, but that's completely out of reach. Number 2, best fit, I would like Odell Beckham Jr. Now, it's way too high at number 7. If they could possibly trade back to, let's say, 15 and then do that in the real draft, someone wanted to move up and take Aaron Donald out of Pittsburgh, okay, then that makes sense. But man, pairing 2 Vincent Jacksons out there, I mean, it's not a bad problem to have, but it's overkill. You don't need to deep route guys like Mike Evans and Vincent Jackson who don't have the breakaway speed that you're looking for in the NFL nowadays. But now I'm sitting here at number 8, Minnesota Vikings. All of the quarterbacks are on the board. Let's pick one. I mean, we were looking for a franchise quarterback. Sure, we have a defensive-minded coach in Mike Zimmer, but there's not really someone that we love. Maybe we want to put, Anthony Barr here, put him in that strong side linebacker spot, but nah. Let's sit here and let's take Blake Bortles out of UCF, big, strong, prototypical quarterback that Mike Zimmer will fall in love with. He plays that old style of football. Mike Zimmer is going to want to run the ball and play defense. Blake Bortles can do just that. He'll have no problem doing that. And you could possibly develop into the guy everyone's comparing him to, Ben Roethlisberger. And you started by getting a good running back. They already have that. Building a good defense. They're building pieces with that and doing that plan. So 8, Blake Bortles.
Sound selection. I, again, would love to argue with you. You can't argue with something that makes that much sense. So you go to number 9, Buffalo Bills on the clock, and they're in no man's land. I remember early on in the process, Eric Ebron was the name buzzing here at 9, and he makes a lot of sense here, to be honest, but I don't think if you're the Bills that tight end is something that you have to do at 9. You just want to get better as a football team. They would have loved to have taken an offensive tackle here and got better along the offensive line, but that's not an option with the top 3 tackles being taken off the board at this point. So now you look to see where you can strengthen this football team. And a lot of people had this guy sliding on the board because of the injury, not being able to work out at the combine or at the pro days. And so he was kind of the forgotten man in this draft, but I think the Buffalo Bills like what they have seen on tape from this guy. They've been able to work him out. They feel really good about what he can bring to the table. They love Kiko Alonso, and they love to pair him up with a guy like C.J. Mosley, linebacker out of Alabama.
Yeah, like you said, they already have Kiko Alonso. Now they're moving to a 3-4 defense, something that I'm not really fond of at all. But you need another inside linebacker, and you're going to get one here in C.J. Mosley out of Alabama. Some injury concerns, yes, but honestly, this is a sound football player. This is a sound football player you're getting. Sure, is he fundamentally consistent as a tackler? No. But I look at him, I look at a Levante David out of Tampa Bay. They're saying the same things about him. He comes into the league and he plays absolutely great. So I can't really argue with your pick here for Buffalo Bills at number 9. Now, number 10, I had the Detroit Lions, but the New York Jets came ring. They said, wait, wait up here. We'll give you our first and our second pick. Let us just trade up here. We want to take Ebron. The Lions were like, yeah, sure, why not? There's no one here that we really like anyway. So, Jets trade up to number 10 and take Eric Ebron out of UNC. The Jets put a small band-aid on their need at wide receiver when they got Eric Decker, and I'm not sure they're ready to give up on Stephen Hill quite yet. They drafted him in 2012, so let's
give up on him. Give up on
him. Maybe they should, but I'm not sure if they're going to be like, okay, let's throw him to the Wolves just yet. We have a bigger need at tight end because Jeff Cumberland is not a starting tight end in the National Football League. I'm sorry, he's not. He's the number 2 tight end at best. Let's get our number 1 tight end now, and that's what they do here with this pick.
Again, can't argue with something that makes that much sense. The Jets definitely could use a target at the tight end position that is elite. They need as much help as they can get on the offensive side of the football. Whoever's at quarterback, Geno Smith, Michael Vick, it doesn't matter. They need as many targets. They need to revamp this offense. They've started to do so. Eric Ebron will definitely help upgrade a position of need on that football team. You look at the Titans at 11, and if you've watched me at all over the past 2 years, you know how I feel about the Tennessee Titans and their inability to get to the quarterback off the edges. Last year, they had some tremendous production inside at defensive tackle, but on the edges, you just get a smorgasbord of guys getting you 5 to 6 sacks, and that has to stop. I'm really tired of the Titans not being able to get to the quarterback off the edges. And so they will solve this problem. They're moving to a 3-4 defense now, and they need to get an impact player that can get after the quarterback off the edges. And so Anthony Barr, linebacker out of UCLA, will fit that bill. He will fit that mold, and he will come in and try to help the Tennessee Titans generate that pass rush that they're lacking off the edges. Jarrell Casey can't be your best sack getter on your football team.
Yeah, I can't argue with this pick. When you're moving to a 3-4, you need as much pass rushing outside linebackers you can get, and here's one in Anthony Barr, who I like a lot. I look at him, and I think he's a sleeker, faster Terrell Suggs. Not as quite as good as Terrell Suggs just yet, but when it comes to rushing the passer, needs to be a little more patient when going against the run and become a stronger, more powerful tackler. I mean, when it comes to power tackling, you can't even compare to a Khalil Mack out of Buffalo who's already gone off the board. But, I mean, this is a guy who's only been playing the position for 2 years, and he hasn't learned all the nuances of the game just yet. And yet, in these 2 years, he's gotten 10 plus sacks each year. I mean, so let's think about that for a second. So, I mean, Titans, good pick here. Can't argue with that one at all. I sit here for the New York Giants. And I mean, the Giants, they should probably take Zach Martin here, to be honest. But I mean, their answer to everything is take a defensive lineman. I mean, we need offensive lineman. No, we'll take a defensive lineman. So I mean, and that's what they're gonna do. Aaron Donald on the board, big penetrating defensive tackle, fits in their 4-3 scheme. They play alongside Jonathan Hankins after Linval Joseph and Justin Tuck left in free agency. He can go on that defensive line as they try to revamp it. Aaron Donald out of Pittsburgh is definitely the pick at number 12.
You took the words right out of my mouth. That's what the Giants do. They draft defensive linemen, whether it's an end or a tackle. It's what they do. It's why they have found a way to win Super Bowls, 2 times over the last 7 seasons, is because they get after the quarterback, and they seem to always hit it big with these guys along the defensive line. Even though sometimes it's overkill, we look at it and we say, why are they doing this? It always seems to pay huge dividends for them. Looks like Aaron Donald will be the next guy in that long list of guys the Giants have drafted on that defensive line. But you go on to 13 with the Rams, and to me, this is a no-brainer. Initially, when I started this process, I felt like the Rams were in a situation where it was a package deal. You get the tackle, then the receiver, or the receiver, then the tackle. And so with them taking a tackle at 2, the consensus in my mind early on in this process was, hey, they got the tackle already, so they must be hunting for that receiver. But at 13, with what's available and looking at what is there, there's no way you take a receiver here at 13, especially when you have a position of need. You could go corner here, you could go safety, but the best value here for the St. Louis Rams is Clinton Dix, safety out of Alabama. You pair him up with McDonald, who you drafted last year out of USC, and you hope that these two can be a match made in heaven in your secondary.
Yeah, Rodney McLeod can no longer start a safety in the NFL. He's absolutely awful. TJ McDonald struggled last year, but you have to give him more time. Let's pair him with another safety in Clinton Dix. I mean, and this is the range he should go. From 13 to about 17. That's the range Clinton Dix should go. Hashawn Clinton Dix. And that's where he did go in this draft, and I can't argue with that at all. I mean, that's a good fit there for Clinton Dix. Moving on to 14, Chicago Bears. The Bears spent a lot of money on their front seven in free agency. Getting a Lamar Houston and letting go Julius Peppers, and I think they're pretty much set. I mean, there's still some pieces they have to fit in this 4-3 defense. I'm sure they would have liked to have C.J. Mosley on the board. He's not. I'm sure they would have liked to have Aaron Donald on the board. He's not. But Calvin Pryor is still there. Let's work on our defensive backfield, our secondary, because we already worked a little bit on our front seven. Let's worry about our secondary now, which needs help as well. Calvin Pryor out of Louisville is the pick here.
You know what? That's not a bad pick, but I look at this Bears team and I say to myself, you sure could use some help in the secondary. And safety is definitely your number one priority as far as I'm concerned in that secondary. But don't sleep on the cornerback position. I mean, you're getting long in the tooth there. You know, Charles Tillman getting up there in age. He was injured much of last season. You look at that cornerback position and you don't really have any guys that are ready to take over the throne there. I would have loved to have seen them take one of the elite cornerbacks off the board. Neither one of them have come off the board. And so Gilbert or Dennard here would have made a lot more sense to me than Pryor. But I get the pick. You need safety help. I mean, how long can you continue to parade Craig Stelz and all of those other guys out there? Safety, definitely a big issue for the Bears, so I can understand the pick. You go on to number 15, and the Steelers are sitting here, and they've got the pick of the litter from the cornerback position. Again, Darqueze Dennard is here. You got Justin Gilbert, who's sitting there. Just about any receiver that they could think of, minus Mike Evans and Sammy Watkins, is there. So they've really got the pick of the litter of what they could ask for at 15. However, with that being said, with all of those players still remaining on the board, you've got to feel good about being able to pick up picks, trade back, and potentially still land something that you want at 26 when the Cleveland Browns call you up and ask to come up to 15 to select Johnny Manziel, quarterback out of Texas A&M. Jerry Jones been running his mouth a lot lately, talking about how he would love to select Johnny Manziel, bring him home to Texas, fill those seats up in Jerry's world. That kind of scared the Browns a little bit. They see that opportunity slipping through their fingers. They pick up the phone, dial up the Pittsburgh Steelers, and get their man Johnny Manziel at pick 15.
Yeah, I mean, completely makes sense. Good range too. I mean, I'm more of a Johnny Manziel fan than you. I mean, we were talking before that we made this video, and I'm a bigger Johnny Manziel fan than you. And I like the Browns coming up here, getting Johnny Football, pairing him with Sammy Watkins and Josh Gordon. Browns need a quarterback. I mean, let's not escape it. I mean, it occurred to me the other day when the Browns signed Vince Young that, hey, wait a minute, he's their best quarterback right now because Brian Hoyer is still coming off that torn ACL. They don't have anyone else. They got rid of Brandon Weeden and they signed Tyler Thigpen, and I don't even know who the other quarterback is. I mean, Vince Young's their best quarterback. Unacceptable. Get yourself a quarterback in round one with one of your first two picks, if possible, and it is definitely possible here. And oh yeah, it's Alex Tanney. I just remember the other quarterback. No. Get yourself a quarterback that can start day one. Johnny Manziel can definitely do that. Can't argue with that at all. Sitting here at 16, Dallas Cowboys would have loved to get their hands on Johnny Football. Unfortunately, that was not the case. And now they sit here wondering, okay, well, we need a defensive tackle, and Timmy Jernigan would be nice, but it's a reach. We need a defensive end. Coney Ely would be nice, but it's a reach. Why don't we take a wide receiver and pair him up with Dez Bryant? Sure, we already have Terrence Williams. Sure, maybe we already have Terrence Williams, but no, we in Jerry World like to do things a little more crazy than that. We feel we need three wide receivers, three good wide receivers. We got Terrence Williams to be a number three wide receiver when we drafted him, and now we're intent on him being just that. We're gonna get ODB, Odell Beckham Jr. to come in and from the get-go be a number three, work his way up to number two. And if things in the future fall with Dez Bryant, at least we have two good wide receivers waiting.
And you know what? I'm speechless. I just don't know what the hell the Cowboys are doing. I never understand what they're doing. Last year it was Travis Frederick, which he turned out to actually be a gem for them, but you didn't have to reach for him in the first round. They actually did well by trading back last year, but then they went and made that pick and it kind of erased all the good they had done. But I never know what the Cowboys are doing, and this just continues to add to that. You move on to 17, Baltimore Ravens. This is a no-brainer. Okay, it's either a safety here or it's an offensive tackle. No safeties are left on the board that are worthy of being selected at 17 with both Pryor and Clinton Dix off the board. So you just go with the next best thing. Zach Martin, tackle out of Notre Dame, is the selection here. Ravens let or Michael Orr walk. He signs with the Titans in the offseason. And so you got to fill that void that you have on your offensive line at right tackle. Zach Martin will come in, fill that void in beautifully. You keep it moving. Ravens select Zach Martin, tackle out of Notre Dame.
And that's a great pick for Zach Martin. I think he's a top 20 prospect, so this is about the range where he should go, and he can play a lot of positions on the offensive line. He'll come in for the Ravens to play right tackle, but if Kelechi Osemele comes out and plays awful again, then you never know, maybe you slide him into guard. So good movable piece of Zach Martin. Protect your franchise quarterback, Joe Flacco, and get him going in the right direction because last season was a disaster in Baltimore. So now we're sitting here at 18. The Lions moved back to 18 with the trade with the New York Jets, acquired a first and a second round pick. Lions thought, hey, maybe we have to be at 10 to take Justin Gilbert, but no. Here at 18 lies Justin Gilbert, cornerback out of Oklahoma State. And even though the Lions have faith in Darius Slay and Bill Bentley and Chris Houston, they're going to say, well, you know what? Justin Gilbert is here. He could come in and probably end up being the number one corner by the end of the year. So let's take Justin Gilbert, cornerback out of Oklahoma State that can also return some kicks if we want him to. He can do plenty of that. Let's take him and see what happens this year. Roll the dice with Justin Gilbert.
And I think you hit it right on the head at the end. The guy also gives you great value as a return man. So not only do you get a guy that could step up and potentially be your best corner on your football team in a matter of a year or two, but you also get a guy that can come in and, much like Patrick Peterson did in his rookie season, come in and give you a jolt of energy in the returns game, running back some punts, potentially some kickoffs. So I think Justin Gilbert gives you a lot of value at 18. And here's a guy that you potentially would have drafted at 10 had you stayed there. You move back 8 picks, pick up some picks down the road, and still get the same guy that you would have drafted if you would have stayed at 10. So that's a great move by the Detroit Lions. You look at the Miami Dolphins, and their whole offensive line was a mess last year. And we know about the whole Jonathan Martin situation and how that blew up in their face. And they needed to revamp this whole offensive line. To me, if you ask me, the move in the offseason was, hey, blow up this offensive line with the exception of Pouncey and start all over again. And that's exactly what they have done. They went out, they signed Brandon Albert in the offseason, and you keep Pouncey, and now you need to continue to build this offensive line. And so you would have loved to have gotten your hands on Zach Martin to pair him up with Brendan Albert and have your bookends at tackle. That's not an option now. So you take the next available offensive lineman, the highest one on your board, that happens to be Xavier Su'a-Filo, guard out of UCLA. You take this guy, you plug him in, and watch him become a Pro Bowler right away.
This pick, I mean, like you said, best offensive lineman available. I like Suafilo late first, and here he is going mid first, and I honestly, it's a little bit too high. You would like, sorry, Dolphins fans, I'm being Nostradamus with your team this year. I think your team is in a lot of trouble this upcoming season if you don't nail this draft. Because last draft was a disaster so far. Deion Jordan could end up playing well, and Jamar Taylor may end up playing well, but you drafted guys like Dallas Thomas. Is he going to start on the offensive line? No, he's not. That's why we're talking about them getting other parts of the offensive line. I also drafted some other guys, traded away 3 third-round picks. I mean, your last year's draft was a disaster, and if you really want to end up at the top of the draft, have drafts that are absolutely meaningless, and the Dolphins have been doing that lately. They need to nail this draft, and Suafilo, I don't think would be nailing the draft. I think it would be a good pick, a reach pick, but I don't think it would be nailing the draft is what they need to do. Staying here at 21 with the Arizona Cardinals, they would like to take a quarterback of the future if one falls to them, and here he is. Derek Carr is wildly regarded as the second to third best quarterback in this class, and here he is at number 20. And Bruce Arians is saying, hey, this guy struggles under pressure, and he doesn't have much experience under center. But hey, if we take him, we can sit him for a year or maybe even 2 years, teach him those nuances of the game, and then he'll come out in 2 years and he'll help us compete against San Francisco and Seattle. So I mean, I have Derek Carr going here to Arizona at number 20.
As a guy that likes what Bruce Arians is doing out in Arizona, this one, I'm really a little apprehensive about this. Picking Derek Carr, a guy that we saw struggle in college when the pressure was on him, and we saw it in that USC game, that bowl game. And this is a division where if you can't stare down the gun barrel and take a shot, because we know these defenses in that division in the NFC West are top notch. They're fast, they're aggressive, they're hard hitting. They're going to hit Derek Carr. Can he stand in there and take those shots and deliver the football? That remains to be seen. But to be able to get a guy at 20 that you feel could be the face of your franchise down the road, I think is a great pick for the Arizona Cardinals. Would have loved to have seen them get a guy that could help them right now, because you feel like a 10-win team from a season ago that just barely missed the postseason could be a player or two away from turning this into a 12-win football team that could be potentially a division winner. But if you can get a guy like Derek Carr and allow him to sit behind a veteran like Carson Palmer, you got to pull the trigger. So I don't blame the Arizona Cardinals at 20 getting Derek Carr. Go on to the Green Bay Packers at 21. Pretty quiet offseason for the Green Bay Packers, which runs right in the line of what the Packers generally do. They keep it awfully quiet out there in Green Bay, and that's why they're one of the best franchises in all of football. You look at their offseason, and they kept their own stuff. And they were on the fence about keeping B.J. Raji. He was almost out of the door. He went out, tested free agency, saw that there wasn't a lot out there for him, decided to come back, sign a 1-year prove-it deal with the Green Bay Packers. I don't think that 1-year prove-it deal is indicative of how the Packers feel about him in terms of him sticking around long term. I think they want to replace him, and this is why at 21, Rashid Hegman, defensive tackle out of Minnesota, could be a guy that they look to replace him at that 5 technique in Green Bay.
Yeah, I like him as a good movable piece around, and I believe they re-signed B.J. Raji to a 1-year deal, but I mean, I don't think you're getting much more out of B.J. Raji anymore at this point in his career. I think he's really fallen off over the past couple of years, and it's unfortunate, but it's true. Rashid Hegman could be a good movable piece, very versatile, very powerful, very strong on that defensive line in Minnesota for the Cougars out there, and I'm sure he's going to bring that here to the or is it the Cougars? I'm breaking
Golden Gophers.
The Gophers. That's right. The Gophers. That's right. Excuse me for that. Yeah, he'll be a good movable piece, good defensive weapon. Can't really blame you for that. Although I would have given a little more consideration to Ryan Shazier out of Ohio State, but still can't blame you for that. Philadelphia Eagles here at 22. I'm hearing a lot of rumblings about them wanting to take a wide receiver, and Brandon Cooks is here, and maybe they want that. But I think Chip Kelly is in love with the taller type wide receivers, and there's not one of value here. I expect the Eagles to give some consideration to Kelvin Benjamin or an Allen Robinson in the second round. But here, I mean, you need a corner. I mean, Bradley Fletcher is a pretty good corner. Kerry Williams, I'm not sure if he's a good number 2 corner, and after that, you really don't have anything. All right, Brandon Boykin, I'm not really a big fan of him. So let's take Darqueze Dennard, cornerback out of Michigan State. A very physical corner, can fit our man coverage scheme, very physical press man corner, and can help us get a little bit of a mentality and physicality on defense that we desperately need in Philadelphia.
Darqueze Dennard is great value at 22, but didn't you just lose Deshaun Jackson? I mean, let's not ignore the elephant in the room here. This is an offensive football team. I know Chip Kelly would love them to be better on defense, but the fact of the matter is they're not. And so they've got to outscore teams to win in this league. And you just let go of not only your big play threat down the field, not only the guy that led your team in receiving yards, but a guy that took the top off of defenses. You need to replace that guy, and you need to replace him now. There was a guy begging and pleading to become a Philadelphia Eagle by the name of Brandon Cooks. He's still on the board. That's who should go here. It's a bad pick for the Philadelphia Eagles, but that's great value in Darqueze Dennard. Look at Kansas City at 23, and the Chiefs desperately want to get out of this pick because they had a terrible offseason. They lose about 3/5 of their offensive line. They lose their little scat back jitterbug in the return game in Dexter McCluster. They're losing pieces all over the place. And so you look at this team, they need to acquire some picks. They need to get as many bodies onto their roster as they can. And so one guy at 23 might not be the answer, but trading back, gaining more picks so that you can get more guys in a draft that's loaded might be the answer. And I think the Chiefs are waiting for someone to call them so they can pick up the phone and move back. And I know just the team for that. The Jacksonville Jaguars, they see an opportunity to move back into the first round. They get Khalil Mack, an impact player, early in the draft with the 3rd overall selection. They see a quarterback sliding down the draft board, and they see an opportunity to come back into the first round and get their hands on him. And so at 23, the Jacksonville Jaguars trade into the slot of the Kansas City Chiefs to select Teddy Bridgewater, quarterback, Louisville.
How is it that you described Dexter McCluster as a scat back jitterbug? Was that right?
That's what I said.
Scat back jitterbug. I mean, that makes sense. Jaguars need a quarterback. Get one in Teddy Bridgewater. And I think this would be very unfortunate for Teddy Bridgewater. I mean, he would be going to a situation where he's in a lot of trouble. Justin Blackmon cannot be relied upon, and I knew this was coming after this guy registered, what was it, a .24 on the breathalyzer, but he got that one DUI. I mean, from that moment on, I was like, oh no, this guy's in trouble. And I mean, poor situation to go into. They have nothing. Cecil Shorts and Ace Sanders, he's going to have to throw to it. And he has accuracy issues. I mean, the fact of the matter is, guys, ever since the season has ended, accuracy issues have cropped up on Teddy Bridgewater. As unfortunate as they may be, it's the case. So I wouldn't see any scenario in which Teddy Bridgewater would not end up being in a lot of trouble this rookie season. He could get better as it went along, but this rookie season, I couldn't see any scenario, if he starts, where he wouldn't struggle. But 24, sitting here at the Cincinnati Bengals, they need a corner or a defensive lineman. I mean, that's pretty much where their priorities lie, because they're too cheap to spend a dime in free agency. They're going to have to keep building through the draft. And maybe that works for you. It has been working for you, but will it continue to work for you? I don't know. You have to keep drafting good players. I mean, you have a couple busts in there like Dre Kirkpatrick, and you have a couple studs in there like Giovanni Bernard and Tyler Eifert. But here, I wanted to go defensive end, but I said, they took Marcus Hunt out of SMU last season, and, you still could get some production out of him. So let's go corner because you can no longer rely on Terrence Newman, Leon Hall, and Adam Pac-Man Jones. And Dre Kirkpatrick cannot stay on the field. He can't stay on the field. So let's take Bradley Roby, mean, physical, short, but feisty corner out of Ohio State and go home happy.
Cincinnati at 24. I love the Bengals. I love what they do in the draft. I think they're one of the better drafting teams in the league. And so whatever they do at 24, I'd like to think that it's the right move, whatever they decide to do. Bradley Roby, cornerback out of Ohio State, not a bad pick again. They got the Ben Gay and Geritol group out there in the secondary with Adam Jones and Terrence Newman and Chris Crocker. And so they definitely could use an upgrade at the cornerback position. But it wouldn't hurt to take a look at maybe Ryan Shazier, linebacker out of Ohio State, or even a guy like defensive end out of Missouri. His name
Coney Ely.
Coney Ely. So it wouldn't hurt to take a look at one of those guys, but I think the right choice is Bradley Roby, cornerback out of Ohio State. Again, he's a guy right in their backyard at Ohio State that they're probably very familiar with. I think he makes a lot of sense at 24. You look at the San Diego Chargers, San Diego Superchargers at 25, and there are a couple of different ways they could go here at this pick. Their secondary was absolutely decrepit last season. And they went out and signed Derek Cox to a free agent deal last season. How'd that work out for you? I'll answer that. He's not even on your team anymore. They were bad. And bad is being very kind to them in the secondary. So right here at 25, it would make a heck of a lot of sense to see them snag a corner, a guy like Kyle Fuller, maybe a guy like Jason Verrett out of TCU. Those are options that are available on the board. But the way that I'm thinking here and the way that I think the Chargers should be thinking here as well is that, hey, you lose your big space-eating nose tackle in free agency. He's gone. He's not coming back. Cam Thomas is now at Pittsburgh Steelers. So if you're the San Diego Chargers, you have to act fast on that position. Nose tackles don't last long, and you don't get good ones as you move further back into the draft. You've got a guy staring you right in the face here. You can get a cornerback in the second round. You can get a cornerback in the third round, but you can't get a nose tackle of quality in the second or third round like you can here at 25 with Louie Nix, nose tackle out of Notre Dame.
Yeah, this is the new fad. I mean, everyone's mocking this. If you have a mock draft, you have Louie Nix the third, you're going to the San Diego Chargers. I mean, that's basically it. It makes too much sense. I mean, there's not many quality nose tackles, 3-4 nose tackles in this draft, and there's one right here in Louie Nix the third. Fits right with the San Diego Chargers. They have a big need at nose tackle. They're going to fill that need here. Like you said, I mean, their secondary was awful. I mean, when Johnny Patrick ends up being your number one corner, I mean, you're in trouble. So, I mean, it's as simple as that. So moving forward to 26, the Pittsburgh Steelers, if you remember, traded back because Cleveland wanted to trade up to take Johnny Manziel. So now Pittsburgh sitting here would have liked to take a corner, but Kyle Fuller is the best corner here on the board and not sure if he's going to be a good fit for this team. But what we really want is we want a tall wide receiver. Now, Brandon Cooks is the best wide receiver on the board. He's the best wide receiver by far on the board, but we feel like we need a tall wide receiver. That way we can finally start running some fade routes, not to Heath Miller in the end zone, finally to someone else, okay? There's only so many times you want to hear the word Heath by the crowd, okay? But let's start hearing something else now. And we're going to hear it with Allen Robinson out of Penn State. I mean, he's just up the street. I'm pretty sure they've done all kinds of research on this guy, and they feel comfortable with him. 6'3", 220, big target for Big Ben, and a big touchdowns coming for these two.
Okay, so your rationale is wonderful. Again, Steelers, I think, could really use a cornerback here. This draft is so deep at receiver, it's not even funny. You want a big receiver, there's about 5 or 6 that I could run off right now that you could get in later rounds. I feel really good about what you've done Corner, however, you can't get the quality of corner that you can get at 26 that, let's say, you could get in the second or third round. The drop off at the cornerback position is steep. And there's some solid guys out there that you could get in the second or third round. But again, you'd be rolling the dice hoping that they're still around when you pick. I feel like if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers, you're sitting here at 26, you picked up some picks. So you got to have that heir apparent. I think Kyle Fuller would have been the best option at 26. But I digress. 27, New Orleans Saints on the clock. And so you look at the New Orleans Saints and you look at this team and you say, what are they missing? And they made a huge leap defensively last year under Rob Ryan and his defensive scheme. But I keep thinking about, and you know, with all these receivers available right here, you know the Saints would love to pick one of these receivers. They lose a guy that was huge in the passing game in Darren Sproles. And so you know they would love to go and get a receiver here to kind of help that passing game out. But I can't help but think about the wild card game. And when Keenan Lewis went down with that concussion and they wouldn't let him back in the game, they almost lost that football game. I mean, the cupboard was bare at cornerback. And I can't help but think that they have to address corner in the first round. The Pittsburgh Steelers don't take the corner that's there, the best one available on the board. That's their loss. It's the Saints' gain. You think you have to take Kyle Fuller, cornerback out of Virginia Tech, and feel like you got a steal and some excellent value at 27 if you're the Saints. You pair him up with Keenan Lewis and feel like you've got a great 1-2 tandem now in the secondary in New Orleans.
I'm sorry, but I have to disagree with you on this one. I mean, you have Brandon Cooks right there. Like you said, losing Darren Sproles, who was such a key cog in that New Orleans offense. And now you can have Brandon Cooks, who gives you something that you really don't have, that now you're missing him. Darren Sproles, a movable guy. You can move him all over the place. Okay, you have Kenny Stills, who's going to continue to progress as a wide receiver. Marcus Colston, I don't think can be relied upon as a number one wide receiver anymore. So let's get Brandon Cooks. But you felt like Kyle Fuller was the best pick there. Okay, I'm sitting here as a Panthers at 28. Hey, Brandon Cooks is still there? Fine, we're taking him. Brandon Cooks, wide receiver, Oregon State. Carolina Panthers need two positions. They need wide receivers, plural, and they need an offensive tackle. And here is a wide receiver that probably won't, in the real draft, probably won't make it past New York. Probably not, at least won't make it past Philadelphia at 22, I don't think. But here he is, sitting here right in the face, so let's take him. Let's take him. Let's make him into C. Smith 2.0, and we'll go home happy, and we're celebrating in the war room.
Can't argue with that. Like I like to say, 3 H's for everybody: hugs, high fives, and handshakes all around that war room. If Brandon Cooks is on the board at 28 for the Carolina Panthers, so you go to 29, New England Patriots on the board. Traditionally, they would trade out of this pick up a couple of picks, rake someone for, their first round pick in future drafts and a second rounder here. But I think the Patriots have to stop with that ideology and start taking players that can make a difference. That's part of the reason why they haven't been able to get back to the Super Bowl, or when they do get there, win it, because they don't have enough elite stuff. Time for them to snag something that can be a difference maker. It kills me. And if you've been watching me, if you watch my mock draft, you would know that I made fun of the fact that every year around week 12, they go out and get Andre Carter on the defensive line, whether it's because of injuries or lack of production. He ends up coming back. What is he, like 67 now? Guy's in great shape. But
yeah, actually, his last Sunday he turned 68. Actually.
Okay, great. So, yeah, sorry I missed your birthday. You're 68 now, and you can't do that again. This would be like the 17th time they've signed Andre Carter. You got to let this guy be. You got to just let him ride off into the sunset and do whatever it is he's doing. You got to address the defensive end position. Get someone that can get pressure on the quarterback. And the Patriots are a very versatile defense. They employ 3-4 principles, 4-3 principles, 4-6. You really don't know what they're going to be in. But one thing's for sure, they need guys other than Chandler Jones that can get to the quarterback. So at 29, Coney Ealy, defensive end out of Missouri, seems to be the logical fit here. Big guy, long, physical at the point of attack, can stop the run as well as get after the quarterback. Prototypical 4-3 defensive end. Think he fits in to what the Patriots want to do defensively. Think he's a no-brainer at 29 for the Patriots.
Yeah, this will be a very good pick. Continuing to add pieces to that defense. I remember watching last year's draft with my eyebrow raised every time the Patriots would go up there and pick somebody. I mean, I would hear names like Jamie Collins and Aaron Dobson and Logan Ryan. And I would just raise my eyebrow. Then these guys come out and they play quite well. And, and I'm like, well, Bill Belichick knows what he's doing. Here he doesn't have to do anything crazy like that because a good player is just staring him in the face. So he'll take Coney Ealy, and then the Patriots continue to build that good defense. And they're going back to their defensive roots. And being the yin to the Broncos' yang could end up working for them as it works for the Seahawks. In the AFC Championship. In the Super Bowl, it could work for the Patriots in the AFC Championship. So, San Francisco 49ers here at number 30. I would have liked to take a corner, and Jason Verrett is here from TCU. But there's another guy, a guy who's been picking up steam lately from scouts. And if you're the 49ers, I mean, Anquan Boldin, you re-signed him. Yeah, and that's fine. And there's no problem with that. But, I mean, we feel like we need to get another weapon in here. And why not get Cody Latimer, wide receiver out of Indiana, good measurables. Again, he's been shooting up lately, but do you trust a wide receiver out of Indiana? Well, they felt compelled enough to trust A.J. Jenkins back in the 2012 draft, and everyone knew that pick was going to be a bust. Everyone knew. And ironically, this is the exact same pick, the 30th overall pick. This time they get it right, and they get Cody Latimer.
You just told on yourself, James. How dare you pick the same guy at the same pick, at the same time, at 30 for the 49ers. A.J. Jenkins, if you haven't learned anything, it's you don't learn from your past, you're doomed to repeat it. You can't make that same mistake here if you're the 49ers. You could use help at cornerback. You want a big target at receiver. You want a guy that can stretch the field, and I understand Cody Latimer kind of gives you the best of both worlds. A guy that's 6'2" and some change, can run sub 4.4 or 4.5 40. So we're talking about a guy that can run, is long, can make plays on the football. But at Indiana, in the Big Ten where everybody's slow, I'm not sure I'm buying this guy as someone that can come in and be a game changer like the 49ers need. I don't know if he's a guy that's going to go up and win 50-50 balls. I don't know if I trust Cody Latimer or not. Guess it remains to be seen, but at 30, you could go in a number of different ways. If the 49ers want something elite, then they can't sit here at 30. They need to use some of those picks that they have, put a package together, and move up and get someone if they want to get a receiver that can have a huge impact on their team in 2014. You look at 31 in the Denver Broncos. This one is easy, not going to spend a lot of time explaining it to you. You lose Wesley Woodyard to the Tennessee Titans. And again, they were trying to phase him out of that linebacking corpus anyway, but he was the best thing they had in terms of defending the pass. Now, they've got another guy, Danny Trevathan, that came in, played really well. And so they felt like they could move Wesley Woodyard out of there, but they still need help at linebacker. Ryan Shazier, the athletic freak out of Ohio State, sitting right there for you for the taking. There's nothing to think about. You pull the trigger and get better at the linebacker position.
Yeah, absolutely. Ryan Shazier, who I thought could have gone as early as 21 to Green Bay, falls all the way down to 31. Denver Broncos. Broncos need to continue building up that defense. Continue to build your defense. Ryan Shazier, linebacker out of Ohio State, can come in, play well on the Bronco scheme. Danny Trevathan, as you said, who I'm not sold on. I mean, he had a pretty good year last year, but kind of tapered off during the last stretch. They lost Wesley Woodyard in free agency, so that's a lost linebacker, and also Sean Phillips, a lost defensive end. Get yourself a defensive player, and they do that here at Ryan Shazier at Ohio State. So I'm sitting here with the last pick, Seattle Seahawks, 32, and the Seahawks would love to take an offensive tackle or guard for that matter. I was thinking about Joel Bitonio, versatile lineman out of Nevada. I was thinking about Cyrus Kouandjio, offensive tackle out of Alabama, but Or I was thinking about Morgan Moses, offensive tackle out of Virginia, but there was a wide receiver that just kept falling. And I expect this to happen on draft day. I expect him to fall in the real draft as well. And the Seahawks love to just sit here and just take guys who fall. And you cannot rely on Percy Harvin staying healthy. You cannot rely on Sidney Rice staying healthy.
Nope.
You cannot rely on these two individuals staying healthy. You cannot. So you sit here and you say, hey, Marquise Lee is a guy who produced in 2011 and 2012. Pete Carroll only remembers those years and not the year that just went on. So why not? Take Marquise Lee out of USC. Hope he can regain his old form. Hope he can stay healthy himself because he has some injury concerns this past year. But the Seahawks do not have a wide receiver right now that they can count on, except for maybe Doug Baldwin. But you can count on him being a number 3, a poor number 2. So let's get Marquise Lee, and he'll come in and he'll compete, with the wide receivers and probably end up winning the number 2 job.
Touche, James Carter. Touche. Perfect explanation. Makes a lot of sense. We know Pete Carroll and that front office, John Schneider and company, do a fabulous job of taking guys that other people overlook and guys that they're familiar with in the college ranks. And there's a guy out of USC that Pete Carroll probably knows all too well. This just seems like a match made in heaven for the Seattle Seahawks. They can never have enough receivers. And like you eloquently put it, they can't rely on Percy Harvin to stay healthy. They can't rely on Sidney Rice to stay healthy. Touche, James Carter. Great pick for the Seahawks at 30.
And thus ends this 2014 NFL mock draft competition between me and Lou. And now it's up to you, the fans, to comment down below who won the draft. For a full draft recap, there will be a link in the description box to the spreadsheet that me and him used. So you can see it all. You can decide who won, okay? Who picked, not only who picked the best picks, but who picked the picks that make the most sense for the teams. Because I'm sure, if it's me and I'm the St. Louis Rams and I have no faith in Sam Bradford, there's no way I'm gonna go into 2014 with him as my starting quarterback. But will the Rams do it? I'm sure they will. So keep that in mind when you're deciding who won this mock draft competition. Lou, I hope to have you back post-draft. We could do some grades or something like that. We can hook up and we'll figure something out about that post-draft and come up with something. We'll stay in contact and think of something because I'm sure the fans out there are going to enjoy having you on the show. But until next time, everyone, James Carter TV draft this Thursday is about time. Wow, what a long off season this has been. But the draft is finally coming up soon, so it'll be all right. Until next time, James Carter TV. I'll see y'all later. Peace.